one full question throughout the presentation, and we'll also be sharing the results of the survey questions asked during registration. The content of this presentation is explicitly for informational purposes only. I have the pleasure today of being your moderator, and your presenter will be Beatriz Newland-Cespedes, Senior Vice President of Compliance at Career Partners International, Florida, Caribbean. Now I'd like to share with you all a little bit about our firm. We help clients drive performance through people. Some of our services include executive search, leadership development, and outplacement services. We have staff and offices in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. Being a partner firm with Career Partners International gives us a global presence. We have 200 offices all over the world and 25 years of service. Now let me share with you a bit about Affirmative Action Services, a division of CPI Florida Caribbean. Affirmative Action Services is a leader in helping federal contractors understand and comply with the government's changing equal employment opportunity and affirmative action agenda, with services such as affirmative action plans, compensation analysis, OFCCP audit support, test development and validation, and additional HR and compliance services. Here are some of the companies we have served and currently serve. Now, without further ado, I leave you in great hands with your presenter, Beatriz Newland-Cespedes.
Thank you, Ariane. Now, good morning, and thank you for being with us today. This morning, we'll briefly review what the Vietnam Era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act, better known as VEVRAA, and the Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act do for us, and the reasons for the changes being made. We'll look at the highlights of these changes. Now, embedded within the highlights of these changes, we'll be going over some of the information on requirements, which we must now now coming into compliance with moving forward. Okay. We also want to take a look at the effective date of these final regulations and what we see happening because of these changes, what is going to be coming next. Before we go on, however, let's see what the responses were for your questions during the registration. We see that quite the majority of you do have to comply with affirmative action regulation at 76%, and just about half are doing the affirmative action program internally and externally, half and half. And what brings you here today? Okay. Some of your responses here were more general in terms of gaining knowledge or familiarizing yourselves with the subject, or keeping up with the regulations in these changes. We had some that said make sure that your company has the AAP in compliance, and also there's somebody who is a first-timer regarding the topic and interested in learning more about affirmative action. That it's great for your personal development. I applaud you for that. There's somebody wondering if they need to have a plan and what has changed. That is a very good question. There have been many changes lately, so we're going to be addressing changes today. And we have some people that want to make sure that when the AAP is sent over by corporate, the changes are incorporated. That's very important. We don't want to take blindly what corporate's giving us. We want to make sure we audit whatever information they're giving us and make sure it's complete, correct, and in compliance. We have also some that were referred by supervisor, and that is excellent. It speaks well to the company. It shows how the management supports regulation and their participation. Now, when we look at both VEVRAA and Section 503, we find these are the regulations that prohibit employment discrimination for protected veterans and persons with a disability, respectively. Okay? They require contractors and subcontractors to take affirmative action in the selection of qualified protected veterans and persons with disabilities. The changes to these rules aim to update and strengthen the contractor's affirmative action responsibilities. Among other things, they provide metrics and more accountability on the contractor's part. This in order to achieve equal opportunity for members of the protected groups. Now, we've seen the OFCCP in the process of reviewing these regulations for a while now, and to bring them up to date with times changing. And we had quite a few conflicts going on after Vietnam, and any changes have had to be put on hold when we were in election year. So now the OFCCP is up and running, it's full blast, except maybe for the government shutdown this past couple of days. That might force the OFCCP to take an unexpected break, but we will see it going full blast into compliance with the new regulations as soon as the break is over. Now, the update among the changes under VEVRAA, we have that section 60-250 has been rescinded. This section applied to contractors who had entered into contracts prior to December 1st of 2003. However, the OFCCP does believe that there are no more of these contracts alive. Either they are expired or they have been modified since then. So to be on the safe side, they have incorporated the pre-JVA veteran definition into section 60-300 to account for any individuals that might lose protection with the elimination of 250. Now, under VEVRAA, the OFCCP also wants to clarify that the way in which information must be submitted to the state or local job services is in a way that has to be where they can be able to use it and distribute it accordingly. Okay. Now, under section 503, the updates seek to be in alignment with the provisions and requirements of ADA. Among the highlights of today's presentation, we'll take a look at the EO clause, the invitation to self-identify, the establishment of metrics to be able to measure our outreach and recruitment efforts for veterans and persons with a disability. Now, this is entirely new, those measures. They are creating real accountability on the part of the contractor and subcontractor. The OFCCP, they've been finding contractors either failing on outreach efforts or not giving these efforts the proper follow-through to be able to get results. So now they're saying there are no excuses for having no results. Here's how we're going to do this, and here's how we're going to measure those efforts. Okay? And of course, we'll have to provide access to all of that information. Now, under the EO clause, it has always been there, and when it's incorporated by reference, it was not clear under the subcontractors or POs what their responsibility was. But that's what the intention and this clarification is, so that OFCCP now says, okay, let's clarify. Here's how you have to incorporate it, this EO clause from now on, and they give the specific mandatory language to be used and in a specific format. And here's the language for both VEVRAA and Section 503. On the self-identification invite, they have to start building up, well, we have to start building up on information that can be used for those measures they're requiring now. So from an early stage at our recruitment process, we have to start asking for this information. We're going to be doing that pre-offer, and we're going to be doing that also post-offer. And still voluntary for them to provide the information. But when we're looking at pre-offer, we're going to be looking into VEVRAA. What the identification is going to do is provide information on the category of veteran. And then 503, the invitation to self-identify. Then when we look at the post-offer self-invite, in VEVRAA we're going to find that there's specific categories involved, and those are the ones that help us fill out the VETS 100, which, by the way, changed its filing date to the end of the month. So if you have not gotten around to it, it's time to do so before October 31st. Okay. And then Section 503, again, you'll invite persons to identify. Only for 503, you'll do that for all of your employees as well within the first year the regulation is effective, and then after that every 5 years. Now, in terms of a person with a disability, there may be some people that might not fall under these definitions now, but maybe within this 5-year period they might. So we do want to send reminders that they can change their disability status at any time. Now, establishing a benchmark. Once we've started gathering our information on the applicant side, we have to turn now outside to establish a benchmark for veterans in this case. We have two ways of doing this, and one is utilizing the national average, which is currently at an 8%. And then the second way in which we may do this is by utilizing the information from Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that's those are in line with what would be, there could be, also the OFCCP is going to be providing a benchmark. They don't have them yet, they're coming soon, but they will have them in terms of average percentage of veterans in the labor force by state. So you will have that information by location where you're at. And then you can also use number of veterans over the previous quarters, and they also give the alternative of the applicant ratio and hiring ratio for the previous year. And that's going to be information that we may be able to use moving forward. Now for the first year, we'll most likely have to do with that 8% that they're providing as a national average until we have information we can rely on and start collecting the data that we need to get those percentages in a more detailed fashion according to our locations. Under Section 503, now, we have the utilization goal that it's set at a 7% for persons with disabilities. Now, this applies to each job group, okay? And it will require annual analysis and establishment of specific action-oriented programs, which falls right in there with the other job groups that we have and analysis that we have to perform for the Affirmative Action Program. So for persons with disabilities, a 7% by job group in this case. Now, in terms of outreach, let's do a poll question first before we go into this. And launch. Do you currently comply with the required outreach efforts? I'm going to leave the poll open for a few seconds. Maybe 30 more seconds. We have 42% voted. Let's leave it another 15 seconds. Let's do 5 seconds. We have 65% voted. Okay. Now we have about 53% of you, and let me share these results with you. Okay. That you occasionally get candidates from the sources you send out to. 21% yes, but never get candidates from there, and that's something that the government has to work on in terms of when you're reaching out to governmental agencies. We're doing our share, our part, when we notify them of our vacancies and try and cast a wider pool of candidates. But they think it's their turn to increase that. I see 53% occasionally get, only 11% always get candidates, and we have a 15% that we're not doing outreach. So to those 15%, I'd say, make sure that your company has to comply with affirmative action and all of these regulations. And if you do, go ahead and start with your outreach as soon as possible. Thank you for your participation on this poll. Okay. Now, we're going to be looking at how do we measure the effectiveness of outreach and recruitment for both VEVRAA and Section 503. Sorry, it's a 503. Now, the OFCCP has already established what information we'll be gathering during the recruitment process. Now, let us not forget that we still have to keep up with our outreach efforts to agencies, organizations, or groups that do their part to help veterans and people with disabilities. And we're still documenting those efforts, all these efforts, right? So the efforts help us grow our pool of candidates that come in time for recruitment. Okay. All this new data we have to gather, and all documentation we keep on our outreach, we must have for 3 years. Now, with this information we're required to have now, we are going to be able to measure our effectiveness. And what exactly are we looking at here? So we're looking at number of applicants who self-identified and the total of job openings, jobs filled, total of applicants for all jobs, total of self-identified applicants, and total of applicants hired in all. So what we're looking at into this information, we're going to be able to measure the percentages of veterans and persons with disabilities in a more reliable way. And we're now going to be able to perform adverse impact analysis as well with this kind of information. And it's going to be interesting how that's going to look. Okay. Our evaluation will also include conclusions. So we have to evaluate our effort and determine, yes, it worked, no, it didn't, and where did it not, and where do we need to make any adjustments. What we're finding is that we have more accountability. I'm not sure yet how to read this phase, but we do have more accountability now. In terms of our records, of course, now that we're more accountable, we have more responsibilities, and we have to share all this information with the OFCCP when it comes time for a compliance evaluation. Regardless of which compliance evaluation we're under, the OFCCP gets to have access to our data on-site or off-site, and of course in a format that they request that they can use to perform their analysis, which are now more comprehensive. Now I think that's when that happy face we just saw starts sweating. Now, what is the effective date? When do we have to be in compliance with all these changes? Well, by March 24, that's our date, 2014. So early next year, first quarter, we'll have to be in compliance with everything but the measures. When they say we should be in compliance by 2014, in March 24, that's for things like the EO Plus when incorporated by reference, the self-identification ID provided pre-offer and post-offers in the manner that they provide. Again, self-identification, they provide a sample for the VEVRAA. For Section 503, they're still working on it, so they have not published it yet, but they will provide a sample as well. Okay. And we also have to be in compliance with our ongoing efforts to be able to do the measures on a later date. Now, if our affirmative action program is effective early in the year before March 24, then the requirements for the measures and any analysis those entail are going to be phased in within the next affirmative action program. So when we renew our affirmative action program for 2015, we are responsible to have that then. But if our affirmative action program is effective March 24 or after, we have to start then with that information on those measures as best as we can gather to start analyzing that information and data collection. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Now, what we may expect? Well, there is a bit of compliance burden that we're looking into. And in terms of this, we're looking at an increase in time, in budget, in resources. We have processes and systems that have to be modified. More data needs to be collected and kept for longer periods to align with record-keeping requirements as well. More analysis need to be performed on this data and additional data. So we also need to have our key personnel trained in these matters as well. Okay. Now, in terms of risk management, from an enforcement standpoint, we definitely have an increase in exposure to violations. The set of metrics that that have been set, on one hand, they do provide us with good tools to measure the results of our efforts, which may help in management decisions, yes. And on the other hand, they open the door to a wider risk of potential adverse impact on selection rates and compensation disparities. Now, we've seen how the OFCCP has transformed from a regulatory agency overlooking compliance to an enforcement agency, not hesitant when it comes time to enforce the regulations. And so we want to keep that in mind as well. Okay. And we have seen the trend of the OFCCP compliance evaluations. They've been focusing more on selection rates, adverse impact, compensation, and not only for females and minorities, but for males and minorities by race as well. With the change in demographics, we see that, you know, whatever race we have considered a minority in an area in the past may not be a minority anymore in the same location. So we're seeing more of that. And the federal government might have gone into an indefinite shutdown mode this couple of days. But we do have plenty to keep us busy right now. Now let's make sure our processes are in place and our data is in order. Our personnel is trained to keep up with the changes on all these regulations, and also to keep the risk to a minimum. Okay. We may open now to take some questions. Will we be able to get a copy of the slides? Yes. Yes. Okay. Where can we find the sample self-identification for VEVRAA? It's going to be under the OFCCP website. That's dol.gov/OFCCP/VEVRAA rule. Again, that's www.dol.gov/ no, /, right? Sorry, / OFCCP/VEVRAA rule. Okay. Do you have any advice on how we can meet new hiring goals for vets? Well, with the vets, it's important that we keep open our relations with local agencies, so we can touch base with them and say, hey, this is the type of positions we have. Let me know if you have any possible qualified candidates in the area. That's a way. And also, you may even invite them to come over and see your facilities and what the positions actually do, so that they get a better sense of what you're looking for when they see, a vet and they look into the vet's qualifications. They may be able to understand better what you do and how that vet might be able to apply it. Our organization has 83%. Let me make this bigger. Better. Our organization has 83% female employees. That's good depending on where you're located at, and only 10% of veterans are female. Do you have any advice on how can we meet the new hiring goals for vets? Well, the number they're giving us for vets is actually a benchmark, not a goal. You already have a 10%, well, 10% of vets are female. That looks good in that sense, but the number they're giving for vets is a benchmark. It's something we can measure against, and we're going to find that the data will tell us more moving forward when we can actually look at our numbers, and given the efforts and the measures that we have to take now, then we can look and compare them. The slides will be available, Ariane, they'll be posted, or they'll be sent?
Actually, they'll be posted on our website.
They'll be posted on our website, so watch out for that. Will the self-identification pre-offer need to be offered to all candidates, or only the ones that have been determined to meet the qualifications? How? Okay. They want to align with the Internet Applicant Rule, and it's precisely offering this identification after you've done the initial pre-qualifications. And then once you have the candidates that meet those qualifications, then you offer the self-invite to all of those. The purpose here is not to be screening out people thinking that you're screening out because of them having identified. So we want to be careful, really careful with that. Do you know when the self-identification recommended form will be available? No, they haven't said, and now they're on a temporary shutdown, so we don't know yet. We don't know yet. It will be, it should be. They haven't said when, but it should be available by the time we have to be in compliance. So before March 24th, 2014, it has to be out. Are there any new strategies you can suggest to help us prepare for our AAP next year? Well, if we're already doing our AAP, we're already complying with efforts. We want to see if in that compliance, in that documentation that we're gathering, we are able to also identify and gather this new information of total persons self-identified that they have provided. So moving forward, we can see how we're going to be collecting the data. If we have the system prepared for that and be able to pull the information from the system, we have to be looking into that with our IT department. Also, we have to make sure the wording is correct. So yes, definitely pull the sample forms that they're going to be having available whenever they become available. The website that the slides will be posted, I'll let you, Ariane, touch base with you on that one. I'm going to turn it over then to Ariane. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Beatriz. And thank you all for being a part of this webinar today. We hope you've enjoyed it and learned from it a lot. If you have questions or would like to get more information on our firm or affirmative action services, you may reach me personally at the number provided below or write me an email. I also encourage you all to visit our website, www.cpi-florida.com. In the upcoming days, we will post the slide presentation up on our website under the Webinars tab. We'll also send an email out to all of you letting you know once the recording and the website presentation, the presentation is up on the website. And for more information on the new regulations, you can visit the OFCCP's website, www.dol.gov/OFCCP. Thank you again for being here and have a great rest of your day.